Hello, everyone, and welcome to the September 23rd, 2015 episode of Balls Deep Sports Talk with me, your Hump Day hero, Scotty Ball, and this marks our 32nd episode of our weekly sports talk show here on WNLMradio.com. Again, that is on internet radio station WNLMradio.com, Northern Lights Radio. Also, thank you if you are tuning in via the Spreaker app, the TuneIn app, SoundCloud, or YouTube. And if you truly want to go balls deep with your show experience here, make sure to follow the show on Twitter at BDST Show, or like me and friend me on Facebook. Just search Scotty-Ball. Now, as always, we have plenty of wonderfully juicy, interesting, or if nothing else, current sports topics to discuss on tonight's show. Excuse me. But if you would indulge me for just a moment, I would like to start this week's show on a somber note. If you may have not heard, the news is fairly recent. I believe it happened sometime late yesterday or early this morning. But the sports world lost an all-time icon. If you're a sports fan, not even necessarily of that specific sport, but the sports world lost a great human being today in one New York Yankees all-time great, Yogi Berra. Now, I'm guessing that there are several people listening or that have heard prior to now that aren't even necessarily big baseball fans, but they know and are familiar with who Yogi Berra is and what some of Yogi Berra's career, some of what he has done throughout his life. I am not going to sit here and cite off his many accomplishments, such as his 10 World Series championships and things of that nature, his Hall of Fame career, his accolades and accomplishments as a manager, as well as a player. But I would just like to give my respect to everyone who knew Yogi, his friends, and his family. I do know for a fact that he was the type of person that had profound impact, always had a profound impact, whether it be known or not, or intentional or not, on seemingly everyone that he became close with, or even, just encountering in small passings. He was just that type of person. You couldn't meet him and really spend time with him and get to know him without just having a immeasurable respect and appreciation and admiration for everything that made him who he was as a person. I happened to have the opportunity to meet Yogi Berra when I was a youth. I believe in my early teens I was probably somewhere between 12 and 15, I'm guessing. But I happened to see that he was going to be signing autographs at a baseball card show back then, and when I was a kid, they had, almost at least every week. If you looked every weekend, every Saturday, you could find one. If nothing else, at least a weekend a month, you could find a big card show, featuring baseball cards, basketball cards, football cards, maybe some comic books, things of that nature. Now that's what happened. Is it turned into Comic Cons, is where all the baseball card shows went, and the actual sports cards just kind of, faded into past pop culture. But anyway, I had the opportunity to meet Yogi Berra, and I did that when I was, like I said, I was around 13, 14, somewhere in there. And I waited in line, and I had my baseball for him to autograph, and he autographed it, and you small talk when you're up there, and of course, the whole time you're waiting in line, you're, watching the person and kind of, just getting to know them, get a feel for them, see what they're like, if they seem cool and friendly, or if they seem, kind of self-righteous and uppity, or, whatever. But Yogi had one of the few things I remember from meeting Yogi and getting his autograph on that baseball as a child was that he had not only a smile for everyone that came through that line, but he had as much time to talk about, anything baseball related, or pose for pictures or whatever. He had as much time as everyone there wanted from him. There was, not one, well, we got to speed this up. A lot of stuff like that when you're in an autograph line, you're meeting celebrities and stuff, a lot of it's very, you can only do this and this, and, you got to speed up and be quick, and, we're whisking people through here, and, stuff like that. That was not the case at this Yogi Berra signing. He made a point that, everyone that was there to get an autograph and talk to him and meet him got the chance to do that. But again, he viewed it as, a true meet and greet, or that just happened to include, signing of, autograph signings of items you may have. His main thing there was just you could tell he was really there to meet as many fans and people that he could and just talk to them, for whatever he could. And that, like I said, that's still to this day what stands out to me and what I remember most about him in that day for me. So again, our thoughts and prayers go out to the friends and family of Yogi Berra. May he rest in peace. Okay, well, now that proper respects are out of the way, thanks again, or I should say thanks by the way, I haven't thanked you yet, but thanks by the way for letting me share that story. I haven't shared that story with a whole lot of people. A few people have gotten, that know me, have gotten the stories on, the majority of my various and, somewhat impressive sports memorabilia items that I possess. But so yes, I appreciate being able to share that here on the show with you tonight. But we will move on to current sports talk. Like I said, we wanted to pay our respects early and get that crossed off the list so that it got the proper attention that it deserved. All right, so now your brief overview for what's coming up on tonight's show. As we did last week and as we will, like I said, here for about 6 months, pretty solid. It's going to be heavy football here on Balls Deep Sports Talk. We will be talking my and possibly your Minnesota Vikings, and coming off of their Week 2 performance, you'll be getting my take on that. Possibly a little different than my take on their Week 1 performance, but you'll just have to stay tuned and listen to find that out. You'll also be getting my full recap of games and notable news and whatnot from last week's games around the entire league, and you will also be getting my pick'ems and previews of this upcoming Week 3 in the NFL's batch of games. And we've also got a few other player news and notes to discuss, and I will also be trying to point out a few fantasy football gems for you this week, if I can, if there aren't so many topics all the time, or if I can start, limiting my rambling. I could possibly bring you a fantasy football segment here, a small one, every week, where I try and pull out some good value players if you are into the FanDuel and DraftKings form of fantasy football, as I am, and also big names that should be a boom, and big names that should be a bust. Those are going to, and possibly injuries, but the injuries will come up in just the regular news and recaps anyway for the most part. But so I am going to start trying to incorporate that here on the show as much as possible, beginning tonight. Also be talking college football. We'll be overviewing the current standings. We will also be discussing the Minnesota Gophers win, air quotation marks, question mark, over Kent State last weekend, and what they stand to, hopefully accomplish here this coming weekend versus Ohio, and just my general take on the state of the Minnesota Gophers college football team. We'll also be discussing the Minnesota Twins as well as the other teams involved in the Major League Baseball playoff race. The American League wild card race is definitely one of the best races right now for that second wild card spot. The AL West race is okay, but there's starting to be some separation, same as in the AL East. Likewise for the NL East and NL West. And then, I don't know, the NL Central just kind of, all vying for the best team in baseball, and the other two get stuck with a one-game wild card play-in. But so we'll take a little closer look at that as well. We've also got the beginning of the NHL hockey preseason to briefly, and I emphasize the briefly, discuss. We've also got a tiny bit of juicy UFC has-been fighter news that I will try to mention real briefly. I don't want to spoil any more than that because, like I said, it's a pretty small, odd little thing I strolled across today. We've also got PGA Golf to discuss as the Tour Championship tournament is starting tomorrow, and that is the final tournament of the PGA season, where the winner after that, not necessarily the person who wins the tournament, but the leader in the point standings, in the FedEx Cup point standings, after this weekend's tournament, will win the FedEx Cup, and consequently, we'll go into more detail when we get to that. But so we've got golf to discuss regarding the Tour Championship, and the favorite to walk out with not only the Tour Championship victory at the tournament this weekend, but also the actual FedEx Cup, one Jason Day. We'll also be discussing a little bit of WWE, giving you some of the fallout results and my thoughts from the Night of Champions pay-per-view this last Sunday. Also, a small bit of Lucha Underground news for me to report to you tonight. If you've listened to the show regularly, you have heard me go on and on about Lucha Underground multiple times. Multiple times. And I do have a little bit of Lucha Underground news here to share with you tonight, so I will get to that at some point as well. We will also have a tiny bit of NASCAR to discuss. I'm hoping to get a little bit of NASCAR, and I've been neglecting it quite a bit lately, and they are actually now, I believe, either this weekend or next weekend. I want to say the commercials I saw said it was, in fact, this weekend, but I know NASCAR is very nearing their end of the season playoffs in their Cup standings series, where the season, they get X amount of points based off of how they do in every race cumulatively throughout the season, and then we take the 30 best or the 16 best or whatever they determine the beginning of that playoff field to be, and then they go through, I want to say, like 4 races, eliminating people down until you have one final race where I want to say there's only like 4 drivers involved in that Cup Championship race, which is pretty cool. Totally different circumstances than a normal NASCAR race where you've got 30 some cars on the track all at once. It just totally changes it changes everything about the actual race once it takes place. But so we'll try to discuss that a little bit. NASCAR tends to be